I think I came to think that I share all the opportunities we are living. So I think this is a really difference between me and my parents. So when it comes to my children, I will teach them to learn more about the happiness in life. I don't want them to be just like me. I just want to be smarter, not to be more successful. I want them to be more enjoy life, enjoy every moment we share in life. I think it's very
A few years ago, we did a study where we asked parents some of these questions. And there's an interesting group of parents because these were people who went to school during the Cultural Revolution, so 文化大革命的时候. And generally parents said, education now is so much better than it was when I went to school. But a few parents disagreed. They said, well, during those days, teachers and students, they felt, had a better relationship and that there was more sort of solidarity within society than there is now. I don't know if that's true, but this kind of question about how much you focus on achievement and learning versus how much you want children to enjoy life and follow their own interests and their own abilities is a really important question. And I think the answer to that question may differ for the next generation than it did for your generation. All right. There's some very interesting work by this man, Joseph Tobin. I want to show you some examples of trying to look at how the values that different societies and also over time have in the way they raise children. So what he did, starting in the 1980s, he went to preschools in China, in Japan, and in the United States. And he videotaped these schools and put together a videotape that the people in the school said, this shows what a typical day is like. And then he showed that to teachers and parents in each of the countries and then got their comments on it. And I want to very quickly show you some of the one that he did in China in those days. And I'll ask you if you can guess where it is, because he doesn't say.
In this segment, you'll see a day in a class of 4-year-olds at Dongfeng Preschool in southwest China. You'll see shots of children arriving, a morning health check, a boarding student having problems separating from her father, children singing and dancing, a group visit to the toilet, a lesson in turning drawings into 3-dimensional structures using blocks, lunch, and outdoor play. It's 7:45 Monday morning. Parents and children arrive at Dongfeng Preschool. Dongfeng is a school for the children of municipal employees. Occupying the grounds of what was once an estate, Dongfeng serves 270 children, ages 3 to 6. 3/4 of these children are day students who attend school from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. 6 days a week. The rest of the students are boarders who go home only on Wednesday evenings and on weekends. The great majority of Chinese preschools have no boarding programs. But boarding programs can be found in most Chinese cities, especially in schools like Dongfeng, which serve government workers. Although many Americans and Japanese who viewed this footage were disturbed to see boarding programs for young children, most Chinese see no danger. Dongfeng Principal Hua told us, parents know that if they put their children into the boarding program, the children will receive the best possible food, health care, and education. Don't they have boarding preschools in the United States? No? How can mothers and fathers who work at night be productive workers when they have to worry about having adequate child care? Every Monday morning at Dongfang, nurses come to school to give quick checkups to the students. Principal Hua explained that these city nurses come to school on Mondays because on the weekend the boarding students are home with their parents and grandparents, who spoil them terribly with sweets and special foods. So many of the children come to school on Monday morning with stomach aches. A party official who served as our guide offered another explanation. Today we are asking parents to have only one child. We're aware that we're asking parents to make a sacrifice for the greater public good. Since we're asking them to make this sacrifice, we feel a great responsibility to provide the best health and educational services possible to these single children. It's now 8:15, and most of the children in the 4-year-old boarding class are already at school, sitting on a bench eating breakfast at steam pot. Here, Ai Mei and her father, Mr. Li, enter the room and are greeted by one of the teachers, Miss Jiang. Ai Mei tugs at her father's hand and says, "Don't forget to pick me up on Wednesday. Keep that thought in your mind, Dad." Mr. Li assures Ai Mei he'll remember, and he says goodbye and leaves the room. Chinese teachers and administrators who watched this footage of Ai Mei struggling to say goodbye to her father attributed the problem to spoiling. Miss Jiang, Ai Mei's teacher, told us, "This kind of separation difficulty is rare in 4-year-olds. If children cry when they come to school, it's because their parents have made them willful by coddling them too much." Many Chinese fear that children in single-child families are being spoiled by their parents and grandparents. This is called the 4-2-1 syndrome. 4 grandparents and 2 parents pouring their attention onto one child. Chinese child development specialists told us that in this era of single-child families, preschools have an important role to play in giving children a chance to interact with other children and giving teachers a chance to correct the errors of parents. After several minutes of discussion in the courtyard, Ai Mei finally is ready to re-enter the classroom and say goodbye to her father. It's now 9 a.m. and the formal school day begins. Here we see Miss Wang, the teacher with the pigtails, leading her class of 4-year-olds in the Little Train Friendship Song. Miss Wang and the children sing, "I'm a little train, looking for some friends. Who will come and ride on me? Good friend, come quickly, come and join us. Come and join our little train." There are 26 children and 2 teachers in this class. Ms. Wang, in her mid-20s, is a graduate of the normal school kindergarten education program. Her co-teacher, 40-year-old Miss Jiang, who has been at Dongfang since the Cultural Revolution period, has no formal training in early childhood education. At Dongfang, all the children in a class go to the bathroom together. It's now 10 a.m., and Ms. Wang's class is having their toilet time. Dongfang plumbing is primitive by American and Japanese business.
Let me stop here because of the time. So, hopefully sometime you'll have a chance to see the whole thing, but what are the things that struck you in watching this preschool? So these are children who are about 10 years older than you, I think? Probably. So what seemed interesting to you or noticeable to you? Oh, no. Well, first of all, he went to a boarding preschool, and also I certainly know people in those days who went to boarding preschools.
Of course, we have the full grandparents, and they can take care of us.
In some cases, but during those days, if I talked to preschool teachers, there was an attitude that actually was expressed in the video, which is that a preschool is better than parents. That parents will spoil children and then they'll become selfish. Whereas if they go to the preschool, they can get professional care. They can get, professional food and professional health care and professional teachers who will be better than parents who are just amateurs.
We know the interaction with our parents is as much that's very important for us.
Right. No, but you raise a really interesting issue, and in fact, as you notice, when Americans see this, they're usually shocked. How could parents with such small children bear to be apart from their children? Well, can I ask, did any of you go to a boarding preschool where you lived during the preschool during the week? So I see at least three hands. So 4 hands, 5. So, and actually, during those days, I knew a number of people parents who were studying in the United States, and so their children stayed in China and went to boarding preschools, and then the grandparents took care of them on the weekends. So it certainly existed. This preschool is in Kunming, so it was a pretty rich city at that time, but it was for families who worked for the city, and some of them had to work during the nighttime, and so the city provided this preschool for them. Yes?
In my memory, my experience is almost the same. Yes, we go to toilet together, and we have to be a group, and the teacher will lead us sing and dance. And I cried every Monday with my mother and to listen to the kindergarten.
Sure.
But we have something else. We learn the math and we learn how to write.
Yes, and they also do that too. I stopped it because we don't have time.
And I remember that I have to sleep in the noon. But
yes.
I don't want to do it, so the teacher would always punish me standing facing the board and watch other students sleeping.
Yes.
Like that.
Yeah, that's a very common punishment for children. Certainly I experienced it a lot because it's something they really hate because they can't see what's going on around them. So it's very effective. Okay, well, now clearly what you saw now is not what you saw today is not what you would see if you went to a modern preschool. And if we had time, Tobin actually went back to this school in 2003, I think, and videotaped what became of it, and it's a very, very different place. I don't think we have time to see this, but maybe when we talk in groups we can. All right, so why is all this important? Raising children means making choices. And, probably many of you haven't, just like this young man, haven't really thought about how you want to raise your children. And even if you have these ideas, your child will come along and you may tell them to do something and they'll run away or whatever. And you may have to adapt to who they turn out to be. But many of the choices that you make are implicit. Your parents did something, so either you'll do it just like that, or you'll make sure you'll do the opposite of what your parents did. Or you see on TV or you see a movie and decide that seems like a cool way to raise your kids. Now, cross-cultural comparisons can highlight these choices, by showing different possibilities and helping us see why we do some of the things that we do. So, our project aims to find ideas and practices in one country that might be relevant to the other, as well as some things that are universals. And we want to focus on two broad questions. First of all, self-regulation in preschool in China and the United States. Now, one of the things that was interesting when I asked you about your growing up compared to your parents was how many choices you have. I remember the first time I came to Beijing in 1984. I came to my hotel room at night and I turned on the TV, and there were only two channels. One had some Gambu reading a speech about farming, and it was he looked very bored himself. And then I turned the other one, and someone was doing math on a board, and I realized what he was doing was deriving the computational formula for standard deviation. It's a very simple proof. And I saw that and said, well, if you were a child in Beijing at that point, the most interesting thing you could watch on TV was someone doing mathematics. Now, of course, today if you turn on the TV and you're a child, that's not the most interesting thing you can see. And right now, children here and everywhere have so many choices that the choice itself becomes a problem. That just like, I don't know if this is true for you, but college students in America have a real problem with distractions. That they'll try to study, but then their friend sends them a text message, or they look at Facebook, or, so here probably you can look at, Weibo or Taobao or whatever. And so it can be very difficult to do the studying that you want to do. Whereas if your parents went to school here, the difficulty they faced might be finding a book, finding information that they wanted to study. They didn't have distractions, but they also didn't have all these resources. And so I think the ability to regulate yourself, to pay attention, is much more important now than it used to be, because there's so many distractions in the world. And so this year we decided it would be interesting to focus on self-regulation by looking at variations in each culture and also preparations to learn to read, do mathematics, and pay attention. We also want to start looking at another question, which is how the knowledge that people who plan to become teachers differs from the knowledge of people who don't plan to become teachers, and looking at particular rational number of fractions, so G, those kinds of numbers. And the plan is that small groups of students here and at the University of Michigan will collaborate looking at, three projects related to self-regulation. One, looking at children's ideas before they start school of how to be a good student. So we can ask children, teachers, and parents to give advice to a child who's about to start first grade on what it means to be a good student. Secondly, videotaping normal classroom activities in preschools here and in the United States. And then the last project is looking at adults' understanding of rational numbers. And the idea is we'll recruit some students here who are interested in this, and you'll collaborate with students who are taking a very similar course at the University of Michigan in small groups. And then in May, some of the students in the Michigan class will come here, and you guys can collaborate, can work together and compare your results. And then at the end, toward the end of the month, we'll put on a small conference, and each group will present its results. We did something like this last year and the year before, and it's been pretty interesting. I think we're hopefully getting better at this. And this is our basic idea. So I guess the next step will be finding students who are interested in forming some small groups. I'm going to be here until March 28th, and I hope that there'll be time for me to meet with each group and talk about the project, help you get started, and put you in contact with your peers at the University of Michigan. Now, I know it's longer than it's supposed to be, but let me ask you if you have any questions or comments at this point.